Welcome to our channel, where emotions come alive through every story. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell, so you'll never miss a new story.
The night he planned to propose to me, he almost died. And when he woke up, I was the only thing he remembered. Sounds insane, right? But my life has never really respected logic. That night, Los Angeles felt like someone had turned the sky into a busted showerhead. Rain slammed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of my townhouse in West Hollywood, each drop hitting the glass with that hollow, restless sound that always makes you feel like something bad is coming. I, Olivia Carter, stood there with a mug of untouched coffee, staring at a wall of gray. I didn't know why my chest felt so tight, like I'd misplaced something important, only I couldn't name what it was. At the same time, about 20 miles away on the I-405, a man was gripping a small velvet ring box so hard his knuckles had gone white. Lucas Reed, my husband. On paper, for the past 3 years, the man who lived like a Swiss watch in human form, precise, cold, emotionally bulletproof, never a second off schedule for anyone or anything. And yet tonight, he was breaking every rule he'd ever written for his life. He told his assistant, "Tonight, I have to see Olivia." If I had heard that in real time, I probably would have brewed fresh coffee, lit a candle, and waited like a normal person. He wouldn't have had to race death on a slick freeway to get to me. But life doesn't ask for your input. His car cut through the rain, headlights of passing traffic streaking by in long, smeared lines of gold. Noah Grant, his assistant, was the one behind the wheel, hands clenched on the steering wheel, shoulders tense. "Mr. Reed, we're pushing the speed limit," Noah said, voice tight. Lucas didn't look up. His eyes were fixed on the ring box. "We can't be late tonight." Tonight. After 3 years of a cold, clinical marriage, the man finally decided to talk to his heart. And to me. If I'd known, I never would have let him drive in that storm. I would have gone to him, called a driver, done anything but this. But you don't get to rewind. A few minutes later, chaos hit. There was the screech of tires, a blinding clash of lights, and then a sound like metal screaming. The car spun, glass shattered like ice. The world flipped sideways. Noah shouted something. "Watch out!" maybe. But his words were swallowed by the crash. White smoke burst from the front of the car. The dashboard crumpled. Rain hammered through the broken windshield. Through all of it, Lucas never let go of the ring box. He held it like it was the last piece of his life he refused to surrender. In the split second before he blacked out, his lips moved around a single name. Olivia. Just a breath of a sound. But somehow, miles away, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and yanked. News always travels faster than the storm. Reed Group CEO in critical accident. Condition unknown. Possible coma. The stock price dipped before the paramedics even wheeled him into the ER at St. Crescent Medical Center. Investors panicked. Competitors circled. Social media exploded. And I just stood still. I stood outside the emergency room doors, like someone had nailed my feet to the floor. 3 years of a contract marriage. No love, no drama, no expectations. He gave me a last name and protection. I gave him freedom and no questions. We lived like 2 units on the same floor, sharing a hallway, but never opening each other's doors. I really thought we could live the rest of our lives like that. Parallel. Neat. Safe. But when I saw him through the glass, pale, still, hooked up to tubes and monitors. A steady, sharp pain cracked through my chest. And I knew I'd been lying to myself. 3 a.m. The red operating light finally clicked off. The surgeon walked out, gave the usual practice lines about critical but stable. Then they wheeled them into a recovery room, his body wired with more tubes than I could count. I stepped closer and brushed my fingers over the back of his hand. Cold. So cold it made my own fingers tremble. I stared at his face. The man who'd moved through boardrooms like a storm, who'd walked past me in our own house like I was a shadow on the wall. If he didn't wake up tonight, I would never get to say the one sentence I'd buried for 3 long years. I never hated you. But Lucas Reed has always had a talent for timing. Just before dawn, his fingers twitched. His lashes fluttered. Then he opened his eyes. At first, they were empty, brown irises drowning in confusion. The doctor leaned in, asking questions in a calm, rehearsed tone. "Do you know your name?" Silence. "Do you know where you are?" Nothing. "Do you remember your company? Your parents?" His gaze stayed blank, drifting past the doctor like the words were in a language he didn't speak anymore. Then his eyes found me, and everything changed. It was like someone flicked a light on behind his pupils. He lurched up so fast he nearly yanked his IV out, fingers clamping around my wrist. "Don't go," he rasped. "Olivia, don't go." The doctor froze. The nurse froze. Noah almost dropped the chart he was holding. I froze too. The man who hadn't so much as brushed my cheek in 3 years was clinging to me like a kid in a crowded mall who'd just found his mom. I forced my voice to stay steady. "I'm right here." He shook his head, his grip tightening. "Don't vanish again. I only remember you." Just one sentence, but it landed like a punch straight to the heart. They ran exams. Neurologists came in and clipped diagrams to the end of his bed. One of them finally pushed his glasses up and said, almost to himself, "This is a very particular case. Deep memory loss, yes, but an emotionally imprinted memory remains." I blinked. "In English, please?" He glanced at me, then at Lucas's hand still wrapped around mine. "It means," he said slowly, his brain wiped out most of his conscious memories, but it kept the one tied to the strongest emotional impression. His gaze settled on me fully this time. Usually, that's the most important person in a patient's life. I looked down at our joined hands, his fingers pressing so hard into my skin that mine had gone white. My eyes burned. 3 years of being the contract wife, the woman he barely looked at. And yet out of his entire world, the last thing his brain chose to hold on to. Me. I didn't go home that night. I pulled a chair up next to his bed and stayed. The room was dim, lit by one soft yellow lamp. Rain tapped against the window, quieter now, like it was finally tired. He slept. But even in sleep, he didn't let go of my hand. Not once. I watched his face, the same face that had always looked carved out of marble in every photo on every business magazine. Now it just looked exhausted and strangely vulnerable. Somewhere between the accident and this hospital bed, something had been stripped away from him. Not just his memory, the distance too. The wall between us. Sometime between midnight and the first hint of sunrise, I understood something with a clarity that scared me. From this moment on, I could never again look at Lucas Reed and see just a husband on paper. Somewhere in all the spaces between our signatures and our silence, he had slipped into my chest, quietly, softly, but undeniably real. Morning sunlight pushed through the blinds of Lucas's hospital room, cutting lines of gold across the sheets. I had barely slept. Not because of the chair, not because hospitals always smell like disinfectant and heartbreak, but because every time Lucas stirred, he squeezed my hand like he was checking to make sure I hadn't disappeared. When he finally blinked awake, his eyes found mine instantly. Like his brain was wired to track only one person in the room. "Olivia," he breathed, like a prayer he didn't know he was whispering. I opened my mouth to tell him to relax, but before I could say a word, he frowned, deep, serious, and said, "You're not allowed to vanish today." I blinked. I just stood up to stretch my back. "That counts," he insisted, voice hoarse. Then he lifted my hand and pressed it against his chest. "Every time I don't see you, this," he tapped the spot beneath my palm, "starts going crazy." My throat tightened. This was a man who used to treat emotion as if it were a virus airborne in the corporate office. Now he was admitting his heartbeat misbehaved without me. Dangerous. Deeply dangerous. A nurse walked in with a tray of oatmeal. She smiled politely. "Mrs. Carter, I can help feed him if you'd like to rest." "No," Lucas cut in sharply, voice cold in a way that made the nurse flinch. "Your hands aren't as clean as hers." I nearly choked on my own breath. The nurse muttered a quick apology and escaped. Noah, standing in the doorway, bent down as if tying his shoe to hide the grin stretching across his face. I shot him a glare that only made him grin wider. Lucas, meanwhile, seemed perfectly unbothered. He opened his mouth obediently each time I lifted the spoon, watching me like feeding him was a sacred ritual I wasn't allowed to break. If he ever got his full memory back, I swear I was going to show him a video of this behavior just to watch him die of embarrassment. Around noon, I stepped out to pick up a folder Noah had left at the front desk. I was gone for 5 minutes, maybe 6. When I came back, Lucas was gripping the sheets, breathing fast, eyes wild. "Olivia, where were you?" I thought. He broke off, swallowing hard. "I thought you weren't coming back." It punched something soft inside my chest. This man had terrified Wall Street executives with one stare. Now he was trembling because I'd walked to the other side of the hallway. I touched his shoulder gently. "Lucas, I just picked up some papers, that's it." He didn't even pretend to calm down. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me closer, pressing my hand over his heart again. "Next time," he said quietly, "tell me before you leave." Was this clinginess supposed to be adorable or dangerous? Because right now, it felt like both. I sighed, unable to fight him. "Fine. Next time I'll announce it on the hospital PA system." He didn't laugh. He just held on to me for a long time, as if letting go might send him spiraling again. That afternoon, Noah returned with medication. "Mr. Reed, here's your pain." Before he finished, Lucas reached out and wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me flush against him. "Don't come too close," he warned Noah flatly. Noah blinked. "Sir, it's just Advil." Lucas didn't blink. "Still too close." I had to smack his shoulder lightly. "He's your assistant, not a threat." Lucas didn't even pretend to look apologetic. He was standing within 2 feet of you. Lucas. Fine, he muttered, loosening his grip by exactly half an inch. Noah mumbled something about workplace hazards and hurried out. I sank into the chair beside the bed and pinched the bridge of my nose. Lucas, you can't scare everyone who tries to come near me. His voice went low, rough. I remember you. Not them. He paused, gaze softening. And I don't want you too far. This man was going to be the end of me, and he didn't even remember our wedding vows. That evening, while I wiped his face with a warm cloth, he suddenly caught my wrist and held it tight. Olivia. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. Hmm? His eyes, dark brown, sharp even in confusion, searched mine with a vulnerability I'd never seen in him. If I used to love someone else, his voice cracked, would you hate me for it? My heart stopped. So the ghost of his past was still there, lurking somewhere in the shadows of his broken memory. I forced myself to smile softly. No. I smoothed the hair at his temple, because the person you love now is me. His breath hitched. His fingers trembled against my wrist. It wasn't dramatic, just real, raw, like he was hearing the most important truth of his life. But his sleep was restless that night. Around 1 a.m., he jerked awake, gasping, sweat soaking through the thin hospital gown. Don't trust them. Don't. His hands clenched into fists. Someone's trying to kill me. My blood went cold. I sat beside him, arms around him, trying to calm the shaking. Lucas, hey. Look at me. You're safe. He didn't hear me. His eyes were trapped somewhere between nightmare and memory. There was rain, metal, a voice. His breath hitched hard. Olivia, run. My heart twisted painfully. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. I'm not running anywhere. Slowly, his breathing steadied. His fists unclenched. His head fell onto my shoulder, as if the only place he felt safe in the world was against my skin. I held him until the tremors faded. Even then, he didn't let go. And I realized something terrifying. The closer he clung, the more impossible it became for me to ever step away. By sunrise, the worst had passed. But when he opened his eyes that morning, there was something different in them. A shadow I hadn't seen before. He studied my face, quietly, seriously. Olivia, he murmured. Did you ever hate me? My breath caught. That wasn't the question of a man with no memory. That was the question of a man whose heart remembered more than his mind. I shook my head. Not once. He closed his eyes, relief flooding through him like he'd been holding his breath for years. And maybe he had. By the third morning after the accident, the hallways of St. Crescent were washed in soft gold. I walked slowly with Lucas, my hand wrapped around his forearm. Physically, he could walk just fine, but he clung to me like the floor might open up if I took a step away. To be fair, in his world, it kind of had. Watch your step, I murmured. He didn't look down. I don't have to. Why not? Because I'm watching you, he said simply. I almost missed a step. Men are terrifying when they're earnest. Especially the ones who used to treat sincerity like a liability. We turned a corner. That's when I saw her. A woman was standing at the end of the corridor, back straight, long gray dress hugging a lean frame. She had the kind of polished, effortless elegance that screamed old money. Perfect blowout, perfect posture, smile that never quite reached her eyes. The second her gaze slid to me, my stomach went cold. Trouble. Olivia Carter. Her voice sounded like silk over steel. I've been looking for you. She didn't wait for an answer before turning to Lucas. I'm Madeline Roy, she added, lips curving. His fiancé. Lucas's grip on my arm tightened. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurdly cinematic. Of course the fiancé would show up now. Of course she'd be beautiful, poised, and carrying enough ice in her eyes to chill the whole floor. I met her gaze evenly. I think you've got the wrong script. She slid a folder out of her bag, flipping it open with manicured fingers. No mistake. Inside was a photocopy of a formal document. Reed Group letterhead. Roy Holdings seal. Signatures, witnesses, a lawyer's stamp. Engagement agreement, she said. Between the Reed family and the Roy family. Signed 3 years ago. I skimmed it. The document was real. The families were real. The deal was real. The relationship. That was the fake part. Beside me, Lucas leaned slightly into me, eyebrows drawing together. His gaze flicked from the document to Madeline, then back to me. Confusion written all over his face. Madeline stepped closer, heels clicking. He lost his memory, she said, looking at me, not him. But don't worry, I'll help him remember. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Lucas's arm snapped around my waist. He pulled me against his side and asked very calmly, "Who is she?" The hallway went dead quiet. Madeline's smile cracked for the first time. I'm your fiancé, she said slowly, as if explaining to a child. We were supposed to be engaged before the accident. Lucas's brows furrowed. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at me. His hand tightened on my hip. I don't know her, he said, voice steady. I only know you. Madeline's face went paper white. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. But she didn't disappear. Of course she didn't. If women like Madeline knew how to back off gracefully, half the world's drama would vanish overnight. She rented a VIP room directly across from Lucas's. Easier to keep an eye on him, she told the nurse sweetly. What she really kept an eye on was me. Every time I opened the door, she was there. Every time I walked Lucas down the hall, she happened to appear from some angle. Arms full of glossy photos and printed emails, each one weaponized nostalgia. There were pictures of corporate dinners, charity galas, family Christmas parties where she stood at his side like she'd already claimed the spot permanently. I flipped through one stack out of politeness, then handed it back. I've seen better editing on Instagram, I said. No one nearly choked behind me. Madeline ignored the jab and picked one photo out of the pile, holding it up for Lucas. Do you remember this? She asked softly. You walked me out to my car after the event. It was snowing. Lucas stared at the glossy surface. For a moment, his expression changed. His eyes went distant, unfocused. He lifted a hand, pressing his fingers to his temple. Lucas? I asked, instantly alert. He inhaled sharply. Headache. The word was dry, clipped, threaded with pain. He swayed toward me like a tree pushed by sudden wind. I caught his shoulders. "Hey, look at me." His breathing turned shallow. His eyes squeezed shut like he was fighting something inside his skull. "Don't chase it," I said quietly. "Whatever it is, don't force it. Look at me instead." Slowly he obeyed. His gaze found mine, locking there like it was the only anchor in the room. "Which one feels real?" I asked softly. "That photo." I nodded toward Madeline's hand. "Or me?" He didn't hesitate. "You," he whispered, voice rough. "You're real." The rest feels like static. Madeline's fingers tightened around the picture until the edges curled. That night, I stayed by his bed again, telling him stupid stories about our 3-year marriage. How he used to pass me in the kitchen in the morning, say good morning like he was greeting a colleague, and disappear behind a laptop. How we'd gone to a charity ball once, and he left me parked at a corner table while he negotiated 3 deals in 20 minutes, barely glancing my way. I told it like a joke, like I didn't care. Like I'd been perfectly fine, sipping champagne I didn't like in a dress that didn't feel like mine, smiling at nothing. Lucas listened in absolute silence. His hand wrapped around mine, knuckles tense. "You were lonely," he said finally. I shrugged. "Not lonely, just invisible." His jaw clenched. For the first time since the accident, I saw something flash across his face that looked like shame. After a long pause, he asked quietly, "If I remember everything someday, will you still be here?" I met his gaze. He didn't look like a CEO right now. He looked like a man who lost more than he knew and was finally afraid of losing one thing too many. "As long as you don't shove me away," I said slowly, "I'll stay." His eyes closed, like the words hurt and healed him at the same time. "Don't go," he murmured. "Not this time." He fell asleep with his fingers still wrapped around mine. Outside, it started to rain again. Thunder rolled faintly over the city, and the familiar weight settled on my chest. Every time it rained now, it felt like the universe was replaying that night. The crash, the headlights, the blood. And somewhere behind all of it, I could feel a truth we still hadn't uncovered yet, pressing at the edges of his broken memory. I didn't have to wait long. Around 3 a.m, Lucas's body jerked violently. "Lucas?" I sat up straight. His breathing turned ragged. Sweat beaded along his hairline. "Don't trust them," he mumbled, words slurring together. "Someone wants me dead." My stomach dropped. I grabbed the call button, shouting for a nurse. But I kept one hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "Lucas, listen to me. You're in a hospital. You're safe." His eyes flew open, but he didn't see me. Not yet. "There was rain," he gasped. "Headlights. The truck. It didn't lose control. It turned." His voice rose, cracking. "It aimed for us." Nurses rushed in. A neurologist on night duty hurried behind them, checking monitors, asking clinical questions. "This is what I was worried about," he said under his breath. Fragmented recall. Partial memory returning in flashes. It can be extremely painful. "Is it dangerous?" I demanded. No physical risk at the moment, he answered, eyes on the numbers. But psychologically, if what he remembers is traumatic enough, it can trigger panic, paranoia, even a breakdown. I looked at Lucas, the man who'd once made ruthless decisions over billion-dollar deals without blinking, now shaking under a thin hospital blanket. Silently, I slid my hand into his again. If his mind was going to drag him back into that storm, then I was going with him. By morning, his breathing had steadied again. The storm in his eyes hadn't. There was something sharpened there now, beneath the confusion. Something cold, focused. "Olivia," he said, once the nurses cleared out. "I remembered something. Not everything. Just pieces." I sat down on the edge of his bed. "I'm listening." He swallowed, eyes drifting toward the window for a second, like he could still see the rain streaking down the glass. "I left a pre-launch event early that night," he said slowly. "I had the ring in my pocket. I got in the car. It was pouring. Visibility was bad, but not terrible." His fingers tightened around mine. The road lights were fine. And then, suddenly, a whole stretch of the freeway went dark. A chill traced my spine. "So the power cut?" He shook his head. "No, it felt targeted, like only that section went black." "The truck?" I pressed. He nodded once, jaw clenched. "Big rig." It didn't drift. It didn't slide. It turned, intentionally, like someone gave a command. He took a breath, closing his eyes briefly. And before everything went black, I saw someone standing on the shoulder, in the rain. My entire body went still. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. He opened his eyes and looked straight at me. "Madeline," he said. Umbrella, some kind of device in her hand. She was just watching. Not an assumption, not a suspicion. A memory. I sat there in stunned silence, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor. In my gut, I'd known from the moment she glided down that hallway in her perfect dress that this wasn't about love or unfinished engagements. It was about power, control, expiration dates. And somewhere in her mind, my husband's life had been an acceptable price. "How long have you suspected?" Lucas asked quietly. "Since she walked into your room with that contract and didn't look at your bandages once," I replied. "She never checked your IV, never asked the doctor anything. She only watched me." I shrugged. "Women can read women. One look is enough to know who's willing to bury you." He stared at me for a long moment, something complicated stirring in his eyes. "But you didn't say anything." I lifted a shoulder. "With what?" "Feelings? Family gossip?" I had a contract and zero proof. If I told you then, would you have believed me over a piece of paper with your father's signature? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "I would now." I smiled faintly. "Now isn't 3 years ago." He exhaled slowly, eyes darkening, the CEO creeping back into his gaze. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "I'm sorry." Of all the things I'd expected to hear from him, that was not on the list. "For what?" I asked, honestly thrown. "For the years I made you feel invisible," he said. For marrying you on terms that turned you into a legal solution instead of a person. For not seeing what was right in front of me until I almost died.
The words settled heavily between us. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the man lying in a hospital gown, but as the one slowly, finally waking up. "Don't be sorry to me," I said quietly. "Save it for whoever ordered that truck." A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips.
"Oh," he said softly. "I fully intend to." A few hours later, he called Noah in. By then, the fog in his eyes had cleared. The softness was still there when he looked at me, but when he shifted his attention to business, the old Lucas was back. "Noah," he said, voice cool and sharp, "we're reopening the crash investigation." Noah straightened, already pulling his phone out. "What do you need?" "Everything," Lucas replied. "Pull traffic camera footage from that night. All of it. Highway, ramps, toll booths. Have IT reconstruct anything that looks corrupted or conveniently missing." He paused. "Subpoena the big rig driver's phone records for the month before the accident, and dig into every contract we've signed with Roy Holdings or their partners for the last year." Noah scribbled notes at lightning speed. "And Noah?" Lucas added. "Yes, sir." "Discreetly. I don't want anyone outside this room knowing the extent of what I remember." Noah's gaze flicked briefly to me, then back to Lucas. "Understood." I watched them, the rhythms between them familiar and sharp. For the first time since the accident, I saw the man people talked about in business columns. Relentless, calculating, utterly unwilling to be cornered. The difference now was, this time, I wasn't on the outside of the glass watching him work. I was sitting on the bed beside him, his hand resting over mine. And for the first time, we were on the same side of the board. The next storm rolled in on a Wednesday night. The kind of quiet Los Angeles storm that didn't roar, just whispered against the glass like a warning. Lucas hadn't slept well since the fragments of his memory returned. He drifted in and out, muscles tensing every time thunder grumbled somewhere over the hills. I didn't dare sleep deeply either. Around 2:15 a.m., I felt his hand twitch from where it rested on my wrist. Then his entire arm jerked. "Lucas?" No response. His brows pulled tight, breath sharp and uneven. Sweat pooled at his hairline, even though the room was cool. "Rain. Headlights." His voice was barely a whisper. I sat up fully. "Lucas, I'm here. Look at me." But he wasn't here. He was back on the freeway. Back in that darkened stretch of I-405. Back in the moment where metal bent, glass shattered, and the world went black. "Not an accident," he gasped. "Truck turned someone watching." His fingers clawed at the bedsheet. I grabbed his hand. "Lucas," I said firmly, leaning close. "You're safe. You're not alone." For a moment he just stared, wild-eyed, until my voice cut through whatever darkness he was drowning in. He inhaled slowly. The tremor softened. His hand relaxed, just a little, inside mine. After 10 minutes, he lay back against the pillow, jaw tight. When he spoke again, his voice was gravel. "I remember more." At sunrise, Noah walked in with 2 coffees and dark circles under his eyes. "Update," he said, handing 1 cup to me. "You're not going to like it." Lucas's gaze sharpened instantly. "Show us."
Noah pulled a tablet from his bag and opened a set of recovered camera files. The screen lit up with grainy footage. A stretch of freeway. Rain pouring in sheets. Lucas's black sedan driving in the far lane. Everything normal. Until it wasn't. Noah froze the frame. "Here," he said, tapping the screen. "Every streetlight on this stretch is working. Except the 7 right here." I leaned in. The entire section went dark, exactly 30 seconds before the crash.
"This wasn't a weather glitch," Noah said quietly. "This was overridden from somewhere."
Lucas didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even breathe for a second.
"What about the truck?" he asked. Noah swiped the next video. A massive container truck came into view, steady, slow. Then abruptly, without any sign of skidding or hydroplaning, it turned. Hard. Deliberate. Right into Lucas's lane. I felt my stomach twist. This, Noah blew out a shaky breath, was no accident. Someone directed the driver, or the vehicle, or both. "And the cameras?" Lucas asked. Noah hesitated. "Most of the footage right around the moment of impact was deleted, wiped clean. But the IT team restored fragments." He tapped the screen again. The angle switched to a camera near a toll booth. The picture was darker, but clearer. A luxury gray sedan, window rolling down, rain hitting the pavement and silver needles. Then, a familiar face. Madeline Roy. Speaking to the truck driver through the crack in her window, Lucas's grip on the bed rail went white-knuckled. The next clip was another angle, this time from a camera across the road. Madeline standing in the rain, umbrella tilted, holding a small black device. She pressed something. A faint blue light blinked. 3 seconds later, the truck turned, and the crash detonated across the screen. Silence swallowed the room. Even the heart monitor seemed to hold its breath. I watched Lucas's jaw lock, the muscle ticking just beneath the skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "Bring her here." Madeline didn't wait for an invitation. She walked into the small conference room with the kind of confidence only privileged people have. The kind born from lawyers, family names, and thinking consequences are optional. She sat down across from us in her tailored gray dress, crossing her legs gracefully. "Lucas," she said softly, tilting her head. "I'm glad you called. I've been worried." I nearly snorted. "Worried?" "Please." She continued, ignoring me entirely. "If you're ready to resume our engagement talk, my parents—" Lucas cut her off. "No." Her smile twitched. "No to what?" "No to pretending," he said quietly. "No to your lies. No to this performance." A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "How is it a performance to remind you of the life we planned? You may not remember everything right now, but—" "Show her," Lucas told Noah. Noah tapped the tablet. The screen lit up. Freeway. Rain. The truck. The turn. The crash. Madeline's breath caught. Then the next clip played, the toll booth footage. Her face. Her car. The conversation with the driver. Her fingers curled in her lap. And then the last clip. Her in the rain. The device. The blue light. The moment the truck swerved. When the video ended, the room went silent. Even the storm outside quieted, as if the sky itself was listening. Madeline didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she forced a laugh.
This is circumstantial. Just footage. It doesn't prove I... Lucas nodded to Noah again. This time, Noah opened a physical file.
Papers slid across the table. Bank transfers from a shell corporation linked to the Roy family to the truck driver. Emails between her assistant and the driver. Encrypted messages recovered by the IT team. Payments. Instructions. An escape plan. Madeline's hands trembled. You investigated me? She choked out. Lucas leaned back slightly, eyes hard and cold. No. Someone tried to murder me. Someone tried to take my company. Someone stood in the rain and watched my car explode. I investigated that. Madeline swallowed. Then she turned to me. Her eyes were sharp, burning with something between hatred and desperation. You think he'll stay with you? She spat. When he gets his memory back, he'll remember who he's supposed to be with. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Then why, I said calmly, does he only remember me? Not you. Not the contract. Not the life you said he wanted. Madeline flinched. Lucas reached for my hand, pulling it into his lap, his thumb brushing my knuckles. She's my wife, he said. And the only person I chose. The door opened. 2 police officers stepped in, along with one of Reed Group's attorneys.
Miss Roy,
The lead officer said.
we have questions regarding the attempted homicide on the 405 freeway. We'll need you to come with us.
Madeline stood on shaking legs. She didn't look at Lucas.
She didn't look at the officers. She looked at me. You're nothing, she whispered. You were nothing. Just a placeholder. I met her stare evenly. Funny, I said softly, because the only person he remembers is the placeholder. Her face shattered. Then the officers led her out. The door clicked shut. Silence settled like dust. Back in Lucas's room, the tension melted a little. He sat on the bed, running a hand through his hair. You okay? I asked quietly. He looked up at me. For a moment, all the CEO vanished. The cold edge, the calculating mind, the composure. Gone. In their place was just a man. A tired, bruised, grateful man. I'm sorry, he said. I blinked. For what now? For everything you had to face alone these 3 years. For the things I didn't see. For being so blind I almost handed my life, and my company, to the person who wanted me dead. I sat beside him. You didn't hand her anything, I said softly. She had to try to kill you to get close. His chest rose and fell in a long, shaky breath. Then he reached for me, slowly, as if giving me the chance to pull away. I don't want us to be a contract anymore, he said. I don't want anything between us that isn't real. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Because every word he said hit a part of me I'd carefully boarded up for years. He took my hand, holding it gently. Olivia, he murmured. I want to start over. Not from memory. From choice. My throat tightened. Lucas. He shook his head slightly. Let me finish. He slid off the bed. For a split second, my brain lagged, not processing what was happening until he dropped to one knee on the cold hospital floor, right in front of me. He opened a velvet box, the same one he'd nearly died protecting. Inside, a platinum ring caught the light.
with my name engraved inside the band.
Last time I tried this,
He said quietly.
I didn't make it to you.
He lifted the ring.
This time, I'm here.
I'm alive. And I'm certain.
His eyes found mine, steady, warm, clear.
Olivia Carter, he whispered. I love you. No contracts, no families. No obligations, just you. Will you marry me for real this time? My heart slammed against my ribs. 3 years of distance, 3 years of silence, 3 years of pretending I didn't care. All of it vanished like smoke. Yes, I breathed. Of course, yes. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sigh of relief. Then he slid the ring onto my finger. It fit like it had been waiting there all along. He stood, pulling me into his arms. I'm not letting you go again. He said into my hair. I smiled against his chest. You better not, I whispered. I'm expensive to replace. He laughed. A real laugh, warm and low. And for the first time in 3 years, the future didn't feel like a negotiation. It felt like a beginning. The morning of our wedding felt unreal, like someone had slipped a soft focus lens over the entire world. I stood in front of the full-length mirror inside the small guest house behind Lucas's Beverly Hills estate. My dress was simple, clean white, satin soft, no heavy tulle, no glitter drowning me alive. Just something I could breathe in, something that felt like me. I had never been the princess type, not growing up, not during our cold marriage, not even now. I was used to holding my own umbrella in the rain. But today, for the first time, someone was standing beside me, holding the other end. My chest tightened, not with fear, with the quiet, trembling understanding that I was finally walking into a marriage with my heart, not my signature. Outside, the garden had been transformed into something out of a dream. White roses climbed the archway. Soft string lights hung from the tall sycamore trees. The California sun filtered through the leaves like honey. Lucas stood beneath the floral arch, a black tailored suit fitting him like it had been sewn directly onto his frame. He wasn't talking to the officiant. He wasn't adjusting his tie. He wasn't distracted. He was staring at me, like he'd blink and I'd disappear. When I reached him, he held out his hand. His fingers were trembling. I raised a brow. You're shaking. No, I'm not, he said, too quickly. Lucas, I whispered. He leaned closer. I'm trying very hard not to pull you into my arms right now. In front of 30 people who all have iPhones. My lips curved despite myself. I placed my hand in his. Warm, solid. Like nothing in the world could pry us apart now. The officiant, a retired judge who'd been friends with Lucas's parents, cleared his throat gently. Lucas Reed, he said, do you take this woman to love and cherish, in health and in hardship, in sunlight and storm? Lucas didn't look away from me for a single second. I do. His voice was low, steady, written in stone. My breath caught. Then the judge turned to me. Olivia Carter, do you? I do, I said before he even finished. Laughter rippled softly through the guests. Lucas squeezed my hand hard enough to make me glance up. You couldn't wait 2 seconds? He murmured. Nope. His lips twitched. Then your first kiss, the judge said, smiling.
as husband and wife. For real this time.
I barely had time to exhale before Lucas leaned down and brushed his lips against mine. It wasn't a deep kiss, wasn't possessive or urgent, just a soft, warm press. Two people who had lived entire years across a wide, cold distance, finally meeting in the middle.
Noah was in the back row, very obviously wiping his eyes and pretending he wasn't. I whispered, "Is he crying?" Lucas didn't turn.
If he is, I'm docking his bonus.
After the ceremony, while everyone moved toward the open bar, Lucas took my hand and led me under the shade of an old cherry blossom tree. The blossoms weren't in full bloom. Los Angeles never quite got the seasons right, but a few pale pink petals drifted down around us anyway. Lucas leaned his back against the trunk, pulling me between his arms. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, breathing the same quiet air. Then he said, very softly, "Olivia." "I want a dog." I blinked. "A dog?"
"Yes, maybe two."
I laughed.
"Sure, why?"
"Because a house without a dog feels incomplete."
He pressed his forehead against mine.
"And because I want to build things with you. Ordinary things. Things that aren't business or contracts or crisis management."
My throat tightened again. He continued, voice growing even softer.
"And after the dogs, a garden. Maybe white roses. And one day..."
He paused, brushing a hand over my cheek.
"A daughter. One who looks like you."
I smacked his shoulder lightly. "You're dreaming with your eyes open."
"Good,"
he said.
"That means I can start living it."
The sunset sank behind the Hollywood Hills, turning the sky into a wash of orange and gold. The wind picked up, scattering a few petals at our feet. Lucas took my left hand, lifting it slowly, gently, as if it were something precious. The platinum ring he had almost died delivering glittered softly in the fading light.
"Olivia,"
he murmured, voice warm and certain.
"No matter when I look back, the first thing I want to see is you."
I rested my head on his shoulder. "Then don't look back too often. It's tiring for your neck." He laughed quietly, pulling me close until I could feel every beat of his heart.
"In that case,"
he whispered against my ear,
"I'll just look at you right now."
And he did. For a long time. Like he had all the time in the world. And for once, so did I. The first morning we woke up as husband and wife. For real, without contracts, without unspoken rules. Los Angeles finally stopped raining. I opened my eyes to sunlight pooling across the wooden floor, and to Lucas asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his forehead, the other wrapped around my waist, like he planned to hold on for the rest of his life. His hair was a mess. His breathing was slow. His features were relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before the accident. It was strange. The man who used to sleep like a soldier now slept like someone who wasn't afraid anymore. I shifted a little. Instantly, his arm tightened.
"Don't run,"
he murmured, half asleep. I smiled. "I'm just sitting up."
"No,"
he mumbled into the pillow.
"Stay."
So I stayed. And for a moment, the world was just warmth and quiet, and the soft rise and fall of his chest. We spent the next week in a kind of soft haze. Lucas worked from home, which really meant he sat on the couch with his laptop, but kept glancing at me every 3 minutes,
as if making sure I hadn't teleported out of the house without permission. At one point, I stood to refill my coffee. He looked up sharply.
Where are you going?
I held up the empty mug.
To the kitchen, 30 feet away. He nodded, serious.
Take your phone.
I rolled my eyes. You think someone's hiding behind the fridge?
Yes,
He said.
possibly.
I laughed so hard he threatened to carry me everywhere for my safety.
But even as life settled into something almost normal, the investigation into the accident continued. Noah came by the house twice a day, carrying updates, files, evidence, legal drafts. The Roy family tried damage control, press releases, statements, denials, but the trail was too clear. And one morning, over coffee, Lucas received the news. It's over, Noah said. They're charging her. Attempted homicide. Conspiracy. She won't be seeing daylight outside a courtroom for a very long time. Lucas's hand stilled around his mug. Not anger, not triumph. Just release. He exhaled slowly and nodded. Good, he said quietly. Close that chapter. Noah left soon after, and Lucas came to stand behind me, sliding his arms gently around my waist. It's done, he murmured. I leaned back into him. You can breathe now, I whispered. His chin rested on my shoulder. I breathe better with you here. That afternoon, we drove back to the house on Mulholland. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and lavender. Lucas parked in the driveway and didn't get out right away. Instead, he turned to me. There's something I need to say, he began. I folded my arms, curious. Should I be worried? Depends. Okay. That's comforting. He took my hand and turned it so the ring caught the fading sunlight. This ring? He said softly. I bought it months before the accident. I blinked. What? I kept trying to talk myself out of proposing, he admitted, eyes lowered. I was afraid. Afraid I'd ask you to stay while giving you nothing to hold on to. Afraid I'd fail again like I failed the first 3 years. My chest tightened. Lucas? But every time I saw you, he said, voice dropping, every time you walked into a room or said my name, or even ignored me, I realized I didn't want a life you weren't in. I swallowed hard. He met my eyes, completely open. No walls left. So I bought the ring. Then I waited. And waited. Until one night, I ran out of excuses and got in the car. I felt a sting behind my eyes. And then you almost died, I whispered. And I realized something, he said. If I didn't get another chance, I would die having never told you the truth. A breeze moved through the trees, soft as a sigh. Lucas lifted my hand again. I won't waste this chance, he said. Not again. Not ever. We spent our first real honeymoon evening, not in Paris, not in Hawaii, but on the rooftop of our own house, wrapped in a blanket, watching the Los Angeles skyline light up one tower at a time, his arm around my shoulders, my head on his chest. At some point, he whispered, I think we should get a dog tomorrow. I laughed. You're obsessed. We're married, he said. We need something furry in this house. You have me. You're not furry enough. I elbowed him, and he laughed into my hair. Later, as the city quieted, he took my face in his hands, thumb brushing my cheekbone.
Olivia, he murmured, wherever I turn, whatever I remember or forget, you're the one I choose.
I closed my eyes, letting the truth of those words soak into the parts of me that had been bruised and patient and waiting for years. Then choose me tomorrow, I whispered back, and the day after, and every day after that. His forehead touched mine.
Deal.
When I finally fell asleep that night, curled against him, I realized something. Happiness isn't loud.
It isn't grand. It isn't some cinematic moment with fireworks and music swelling in the background. Sometimes happiness is a quiet rooftop, a warm shoulder, a dog we haven't adopted yet, a future we get to write from scratch, and a man, once cold, once distant, once lost, who now holds my hand in his sleep as if letting go would break the world in half. After the storm, there is always calm. But if you are lucky, and I was, there is also love.